Come, spellweavers, reavers, rogues, and men-at-arms, and answer the call of adventure. Pick up your sword, your axe, your spellbook, your bow, your rulebook, and your dice, and join the forces of good in their eternal fight against vile monsters, conspiring min-maxers, horny bards, and blood-soaked murder hobos. Discover the treasure trove of role-playing games here on Rollin Bones. My name is Ryan Howard, and I shall be your guide. Good evening, Boneheads, and welcome to Rollin' Bones with Ryan Howard, your RPG treasure trove. I'm your host and king of the Boneheads, Ryan Howard, and this evening, this week of Thanksgiving, as we gather together to eat way too much turkey, watch football, and have arguments with our family members we haven't seen all year, I have decided to start things off by discussing a game that just kind of recently came to my attention, appropriately enough right after we wrapped up on Hellgate Trilogy, so the Weird West is still very much at the forefront of my mind, and we'll be getting back to it next week as well. But today we're going to be talking about something very unique and very awesome, and that is a Weird West game that is compatible with Dungeon Crawl Classics. This book is very hard to hold up in frame and not cover my microphone, just because it's gigantic. Anyway, not to bury the lead too much, we are, of course, talking about Weird Frontiers by David Beatty, put out by Stiff Whisker Press. And Dave is actually going to be on the show in December, so I'm doing this in advance of his appearance on the show, just to familiarize everyone with Weird Frontiers, and also, I mean, how could I not? At this point, we've done so many episodes on DCC RPGs and RPGs that are compatible with Dungeon Crawl Classics, so, why not give this thing the same treatment that I've given to Dungeon Crawl Classics and Mutant Crawl Classics, if nothing else to prepare you guys for what Dave and I are going to be talking about in December. So that's what we're doing tonight. We're talking about Weird Frontiers. And along the way, just because I am very familiar with it and it is a system that I love and hold dearly, I will inevitably be comparing this in places to Deadlands. Even though, Savage Worlds and DCC are worlds apart as far as systems, different philosophies, different everything. I'll actually be talking about that also in December with Lou, but that'll be on his show. So, yeah, there will be a little bit of comparison, but this is not, Weird Frontiers versus Deadlands, because it's very hard to compare the two, and they take inspiration from two very different places. So, enough chit-chat, let's move on over to the screen share so you guys can take a look at what we're talking about here. Alrighty, right off the bat, you know exactly what you're in for when you see this cover. I mean, just look at this. This is gorgeous. This is fantastic. You've got literal Cowboy Thulu here on the cover. The Miskatonic Kid himself. For anyone who didn't watch Hellgate or watched Hellgate but couldn't see what was going on because of green screen shenanigans, Bizarre Hands tried to pull this off on the Halloween episode of Hellgate. He had his Cthulhu onesie on, and he put his cowboy hat on. Unfortunately, the Cthulhu onesie was green, so it made him look like he was coming through his green screen, and the illusion didn't really work. But, this is Cowboy Thulu, Cow Thulu. My personal favorite name is the Miskatonic Kid. It's a little more subtle. Might actually sound like something or someone you'd run into in the Wild West. But, that's neither here nor there. And by the way, I don't think any of us actually knew this was a thing when Bizarre Hand showed up dressed like that. If I did, I would have called it out. But, no one mentioned Weird Frontiers when that happened, so there's that. Before we, dig into this game, though, let's talk a little bit about kind of the background here. So this game originated on Kickstarter. I was not originally a backer. I did not jump on this Kickstarter because I didn't know about it. Honestly, I didn't. I was not involved with the circle that connected Dave Beatty and I at that point in 2019. I kind of was, but I really only knew Levi. So I completely missed out on this. I didn't go to North Texas in 2019. None of that. I was not involved to the degree that I am now with this crowd. I didn't even really know what Dungeon Crawl Classics was, but this thing actually began life as Dark Trails, I believe was the original. Yes, Dark Trails RPG, and that's what the campaign's called. There was a little bit of a snafu with Chaosium, which you guys may or may not have heard about. They've got a supplement called Down Darker Trails, so, Dark Trails, Down Darker Trails. To make a long story short, Dave ended up changing the name to Weird Frontiers. This was originally kickstarted back in 2019, couple delays, not the least of which was that little snafu with the name, and this eventually came out in this year, 2021. So I believe it went out to backers in February, and it's now generally available on DriveThruRPG. And one last thing to make you aware of, this is a free copy that Dave sent me, but I will say this is not a review. This is not a review because, again, this game has been out for a while. I have not played this game, at a table played this game, so I wouldn't necessarily feel comfortable reviewing it. This is just an introduction to what is offered here in the world of Weird Frontiers. And, my opinion will come out as we go through, but for the most part, that's, this is just walking through the book and seeing what there is to see. Alrighty, so, kicking things off, we have, at the beginning of the book, and this is an interesting design choice that I really like, we start with frequently referenced tables. Before we even get into the bulk of the text here and what all this stuff means, right at the beginning of the book, you just have, these are the tables that you're going to be looking for the most part. So up here you've got the ability modifiers. I'll hold this still for you guys. Experience needed per level. This is pretty consistent across DCC games. Sample DCs. Examples of boons and hexes, which we'll get into. Combat modifiers for missile fire, attacker, defender statuses, and what that means for combat. 2-weapon table. We'll talk a little bit about that too. And the firearms table. So these are all the possible weapons that you get. And something that's interesting here that we'll get into as far as the technology level of this game, you do have some steampunk stuff. But for the most part, because of the year that this game is set in, which I believe is like 1865 or 1866, right at the very end of the Civil War. A lot of your revolvers here, actually all the revolvers to start, are cap and ball revolvers, which means reloading them is a pain, as reflected by this reload time. Just for reference, as we zoom in on the reload here, that 3, let me make sure I'm highlighting the correct one. The 3 here, light pistol. That is 3 rounds to reload 1 bullet. Because a round is 10 seconds, and you're dealing with a cap and ball revolver. So, we'll explain a little bit more of this as we go through. But that's at the beginning. You've got those reference tables, which we'll go back to as we get to those various things. So to start, we've got the title page here. Like I mentioned, it's written by David Beatty. Got a plethora of contributing writers, people who helped out along the way. There are a few familiar names in here. John Hook is probably the most familiar to you guys who have been observing the show for a while, since he's been on before. As far as artists, Diogo is somewhat familiar. He's done a lot of work with Levi, so I've talked about him and seen a lot of his art. Peter Mullen, you guys have seen these episodes that I do on the DCC stuff. You've heard me talk about Peter Mullen. He's fantastic. Yeah, there's a lot of guys here. And then, of course, Joseph Goodman himself was actually involved in, working on this game. So, this isn't an official Goodman Games product, but it's damn near close. This has the seal of approval. They were very much involved in the construction of this particular game. So yeah, this is legit. And, it's completely compatible with DCC and MCC. So theoretically, if you want to run a game where a manimal, a wizard, and a gunslinger all meet up in some kind of weird nether world, you can certainly do so. That is an option that you have if you have all of those books. So yeah. Of course, the table of contents, and we'll skip forward a little bit. Joseph Goodman wrote the foreword for this. Nice, lovely art piece here. I love stuff like this. It looks like kind of a take on the James Franco Buster Scruggs meme. And I think it's also a reference to Hang 'em High, if I'm not mistaken. I believe Hang 'em High. There's some Western movie that the main character is framed by a noose in the poster. It might be Hang 'em High. I'm sure there are several, but it's a great Western image there. A little bit of an introduction that I will read in the stylings of Mr. Cheyenne Wright. Howdy, stranger. Gossip at the campfire has it you plan to throw a saddle on that old flea bag and hit the trail, hoping to make a dent in the rising tide of darkness threatening the frontier. Well, it wouldn't be fair to send you on your way without some words of wisdom and basic survival. Rules for when you get thrown into the thick of it with your posse. So listen up. Welcome to the frontier. And from there we get into our first chapter. So, the explanation of how all of this kicks off. With all of these Weird West games, there is some kind of inciting incident. And usually that inciting incident coincides with some kind of event involving the American Civil War, because all of these kind of speculative history, Wild West games all involve the Civil War in some way. Pretty much every American steampunk book, game, piece of media involves an alternate ending or continuation of the Civil War. And that is just because, as Sherry Priest said on a panel that she did with Jim Butcher years ago at DragonCon that I got the pleasure of seeing, the two things that advance technology more than anything else in the world are pornography and warfare. So the only way you get these like steampunk Edison machines, these like steam-powered mechs and other kind of weird steampunk devices that you see in that kind of fiction, is to have some kind of war going on or some kind of industrial movement going on. And if they're, weaponized, it's a war. So that's where a lot of that comes from. And, the Civil War also sets the stage for the Wild West as we know it. If the Civil War had not gone the way it had gone, the West as we know it would not have existed, and definitely certain characters of the West would not have been as famous as, they were. Billy the Kid was a child of the Civil War. The James Gang, they were heavily involved in the Civil War. Everyone famous from the Wild West who was alive at the time had some kind of involvement in the Civil War. So that's where that comes from. And for anyone who is potentially watching or listening to this who's not American, I am referring to the American Civil War, the war between the states, from 1861 to 1865, North versus South. You've heard of it. Anyway, so Weird Frontiers begins with an alternate ending to the Civil War in 1865. Nyarlathotep, a legendary elder god, seizes the opportunity to awaken his slumbering brothers and sisters and free them from dimensional exile with a living tome called the Necronomicon. The grimoire is filled with forbidden lore, including the ancient rituals needed to bring about an event comparable to a biblical apocalypse. A cabal of cultists dedicated to the forgotten gods and entrusted with the tome head off into Mexico territory to bring about the end of all things. This week-long period of rituals would become known as the 7 Days of Night due to a lunar eclipse and its accompanying astral phenomena. So everything spins out of the 7 Days of Night. Every character has some kind of supernatural aspect to them. This is kind of where this parts company from Deadlands, where in Deadlands you get to, kind of decide which path you're going down as far as, whether you're arcane or not arcane. Obviously, Clayton McTaggart was not. He's just a dude with guns. But in this game, everyone's got some kind of magical something or other, which we'll get into with, each one. And so, as this event is going on, during the series of rituals, the Twisted Cabal awoke long-dormant elder gods, now painfully aware of their imprisonment. However, they would only partially succeed at opening the gates to set them free. Unbeknownst to the cult, a posse of Texas Rangers, led by a modern-day Knight Templar, were hot on their trail. The posse discovered the Cabal mid-ceremony and cut them down like dogs. The Necronomicon escaped destruction, as it always has, scattering itself so that each page flew on a summoned arcane wind to the darkest corners of the earth. So basically, these guys only cracked the door, they didn't fully open the door. So, Cthulhu, Azathoth, all of them, they're still imprisoned. But other things have gotten through. And definitely other people are trying to bring about the apocalypse, finish what was started on the 7 Days of Night, and continue this ritual. So there's all kinds of craziness that has happened, and the recent blood spilling of the Civil War made the ground all the more fertile for eldritch hijinks. So here we are. Now, tools of the trade. Of course, you've got the Xochi dice. Those are necessary. I've actually got the stuff on hand here. So Xochi dice, I've pulled them out this time. So if a specific dice is referenced, like a D30, I can just grab it. You also need your character sheets. It does recommend having a copy of DCC around. But again, this game stands on its own, so you don't necessarily need Dungeon Crawl Classics. It'll just kind of expand spell options, give you monsters, stuff like that. In addition to that, you also need cards, a deck of playing cards for each player. I have my Rush cards here, just because, you know, I like Rush, and I like showing off the fact that I have Rush playing cards. One thing that I find interesting about this deck is the Joker. The Joker is the fans, and if you know Rush fans, you know exactly why that is. I say that as a proud, proud Rush fan. But for the purposes of theming, and because they are bigger and therefore easier to see on stream, anytime cards are referenced, that's just me putting my Rush deck back together, I will be referencing the Deadlands Oversized Action deck by my good friend Cheyenne Wright. Because, like I said, it's, you know, giant cards, easy to see what I've got here, Ace of Diamonds, and also, I mean, like, just, it's cowboy themed. How can I not go with it's cowboy themed? So anyway, you'll need a deck of cards for each player that has firearms. We'll explain why in just a little bit. And you also need poker chips. It recommends black and white for the boons and hexes. I've got a full set here, so I've got green, black, white, red, and blue. I also have some Deadlands ones. They're in my Deadlands box, though. Fun fact about these poker chips, these are the very same poker chips that were involved in the Deadlands incident. Eventually, I was able to recover all but one green poker chip. I'm still missing a green poker chip from the night of the Deadlands incident. So, yeah, these are the poker chips that were thrown about during the boredom of me trying to explain the alternate history of my Deadlands game. So there's that. These are an artifact. They are imbued with the power of my early DMing frustration. And that's what you need to play Weird Frontiers. So, of course, we start off here with the core mechanics. I'll zoom in here a little bit. Take a look at this art. It's fantastic. I can't tell if this man is having a siesta or if he's dead. I think he's dead. But, yeah, he's dead. He has to be. Anyway, it's DCC. Your core mechanic is going to be a D20 roll trying to meet a target number. You do have the dice chain, so sometimes you go up, sometimes you go down. If you roll equal to or higher to the DC or AC, you succeed, otherwise you fail. A roll of an unmodified 1 is an automatic failure. It's a fumble and brings some degree of disaster. Unmodified 20 is an automatic critical success. Additional game mechanics can modify these rolls, as mentioned. So yeah, that's what we're dealing with. There's a one pager here called The Trapper's Tale. Gives you a little bit of flavor and background for what's going on here. Actually, it's a couple pager, but it's a short story, essentially. And then we get into character creation. Great little piece here with a guy getting his foot eaten by an alligator. So, like with all of these games, it's recommended that you roll 3d6 in order. You're dealing with the same ability scores here: strength, agility, stamina, personality, intelligence, and luck. Again, you can roll and then assign, but these games all recommend 3d6 in order. That's what you signed up for with DCC. 3d6 in order. Roll a d4 for your 0 level character hit points. Grit is a new ability added to Weird Frontiers, and it's the physical and mental stress a character can withstand while facing things best left unseen. So this is kind of your sanity mechanic, in a way. So you add your stamina and your personality and divide by 2, and that's how you get your grit level. And then your luck ability, you roll that on the table. It gives you a birth augur. So again, that is a D30 roll. You roll on the occupation chart. The occupation chart in this game is bonkers, by the way. And then you roll 1d4, and that is how much money you get to spend on some gear and provisions to help you kind of kick things off. You've also got your trade good. And then you're at 0 level, your D14 is your fumble die, and your D6 is your critical hit die. And then once you get through the funnel, you get to the path system. These are your classes. Actually, sorry, the path system is the alignment system. And all of your characters start with walk the line. Because there's the path of the righteousness, the path of damnation, and then walking the line. So everyone's going to start neutral, and then you kind of go from there. Whichever way your character goes based on the way you're role-playing them. It's kind of a floating alignment system, rather than your character is this, play him this way. Your character starts in the middle, walking the line, and then the way you play them kind of determines how they go, and you get different bonuses based on the way your character's acting for different things. And then you get your saves. So stamina modifies fortitude, agility modifies reflex, and personality modifies willpower. Once you pick your class, you'll get additional bonuses to this from the class. And then this is going into the attributes. You have the ability modifier table here again. Strength, again, going down the list here, whether or not you can crush a tomato. Intelligence, that is knowing that a tomato is a fruit. Personality, that's being able to sell someone a fruit salad that has tomatoes in it. Stamina is how many crates of tomatoes you can carry up a flight of stairs before you get winded. And then agility is how far you can throw a tomato. And luck is whether or not you actually have to hear me give the tomato analogy again, I suppose. Or throwing a tomato and, hitting the thing that you're trying to hit that's way further away than your agility would allow you to. Luck is your X factor, basically. And this is demonstrated with your birth augur. So if you have a decent luck score and you roll your D30, like I'm going to do right now, and you get a 12, your birth augur is the Shadowkin. You apply your luck modifier to all corruption rolls. Yay! You are especially susceptible to corruption, as opposed to your friend who rolled a 20 with the Hawkeye, and they apply their modifier to any ranged attack roll. That is great. And then your saving throws are explained here. So fortitude, how well you can shrug off physical damage. Stamina modifier, like we said. Reflex is your ability to minimize damage an attack inflicts on you. Or sorry, your ability to avoid attacks is your reflex. Your dodge. And then willpower is being able to withstand attacks on your mind, essentially, which is very important when it comes to a game like this where fear runs rampant. And you've got what looks like Gunslinger Tom Waits here. I'm all in favor of that. I like me some Tom Waits. And then you have your occupations. So the reason I said the occupation table here is bonkers. It is a D100, but you've got so many different weird things available to you on this chart. You've got, Pinkerton agent, obviously, it's the West. Puppeteer, uh, hypnotist, thespian, sword swallower. Somewhere here you have a weightlifter. There you go. Sideshow freak, number 15. You are like the strong man, essentially. There's a lot of like vaudeville freak show characters that you can roll up here. Lumberjack, teamster, butler. I love that if you're a butler, your weapon's a candlestick. That's hilarious. Dance hall girl, carpetbagger. Ah, carpetbaggers. Snake oil salesman. Auctioneer. With a D2 gavel. If I could do any kind of decent auctioneer impression, I would have done one, but it's always just me making gibberish sounds. It's never me doing anything skillful in that regard. I can't actually be an auctioneer. But you've got your regular stuff. You've got your cavalrymen, clergymen, soldier, scout, riverboat pilot. So there's some crazy ones, some regular ones, gunsmith. It's a big hodgepodge of different things that you could encounter in the Weird West, and this is just for 0 level. This is what you start with, essentially. And then down here, all the guns, you're given like stats here. So if you start with a pistol, then you have a light pistol, D8 damage. You can fire 2 shots per round. 6 shots, 3 rounds to reload, and then 10 feet is short range, 20 feet is medium range, 60 feet's long range. Rifle, breech loading carbine, Derringer's a Derringer, and your shotgun's a double barrel muzzle loader. Did they make double barrel muzzle loaders? I suppose they did. I don't know. Who am I to critique that? I'm sure they did at some point. It's every time I think about double barrel shotguns, I think of breech loaders, but that's probably just the baggage I'm bringing of Western movies and stuff like that. There's a little box talking about the funnel mindset, and it's basically just, you get through your first adventure. You're going to have multiple characters that you end up going through this funnel with. And once you get through that, you get 4 XP, and you get to first level. So whoever makes that alive gets to, essentially be a character. And that's the thing about the funnel that, is interesting. You have all of these commoners kind of running through this crazy scenario. You're thrown into the midst of darkness, and whoever survives gets to be the adventuring party. And that's something I really love about these games. Then you have the XP table. Once you hit these milestones, you level up. At 0 level, you're proficient with a single weapon. I was muted that whole time. Interesting. Sorry for people listening on audio. I've been muting my mic when I take a drink just so you guys don't hear it. And I forgot to unmute, or I hit the button and it didn't work. So going back a little bit, just so you guys can hear it, with the weapon training, you start off with just the one weapon you're trained with, which was on the table up there. And, you can find weapons along the way, but, it'll just be a D20 roll at that point because you're not really proficient with anything. And then the paths, which is what we were mentioned. So walking the line, this is where everyone starts. You're neutral because you don't really know anything about the supernatural, essentially. The next path is the path of the righteous. So characters walking the line towards that of the righteous often share similar qualities. Folks look to you when times are darkest for inspiration and for a steady gun when a good talking to won't keep the peace. You obey the law if the law serves the best interest of the people it was written for. You're typically a spiritual person that finds words of the good book far more enjoyable than a stiff whiskey. You have a hard time resisting the call for help from those less fortunate and try to lead by example, so those in the flea-bitten towns you visit understand that the good always trumps evil at the end of the day. So, you come face to face with darkness and you decide to fight against it. That's the righteous. The damned. Unfortunately, characters walking the line towards that of the damned are in no shortage, and their reasons for embracing the crooked road are many and varied. Good intentions often take... Go past some art. I don't want to bury the lead here, but, some of this is cool looking. This is a little odd, but I think it's supposed to be odd. And this down here is just gorgeous. I love that. So, let's see. Good intentions often take a backseat to bad choices, leaving you with a knack for doing questionable things, often to good people. You spend your life thirsting for things most folks see as paving the road to damnation. There's no law you won't break or a sin you won't commit, and assume that there's always a chance you'll be hanging from the bad end of a rope by sundown. And it says, helping innocents isn't entirely out of the question, but you rarely place yourself in danger or go out of your way to do so. So basically, you can still exist within a party, but, it's not... You're ultimately going down a bad path. To contextualize this in Clayton... When we started Hellgate, Clayton was very much on the path of the damned. I think he's shifting towards the path of the righteous, but we'll have to see what kind of comes of that. My idea with Clayton, now that he's gotten his revenge, is to, essentially get past it. And find a life where he doesn't have to be... a bad man. And so that's what I'm going to be working towards next season. But that's not Weird Frontiers, that's Deadlands. So, once a character starts their adventures, make a note of the path somewhere on the character sheet. Weird Frontiers does have official character sheets, and it does have a section for the line. And at the end of each session, players will bring up some of the best highlights of the game. And this is super interesting. You basically go on trial for all the things you did. So, again, to use Clayton McTaggart as an example, in that first session, Clayton shot a dude in cold blood before he pulled his gun, essentially just for kind of talking big. And for, threatening to do something. Clayton shot him dead. That would probably be a bad action. And I think the rest of the party would say, yeah, that's not something a good guy does. I did put a stop to that situation, but, you know, again, that if we were playing Weird Frontiers, that would have put Clayton more on the path of the damned. As would probably shooting John Wesley Hardin, but I don't know. The jury's still out on the ramifications of that particular circumstance. But anyway, should the judge agree, the judge is the game master, by the way. You can still call the game master the marshal. I recommend that for any Western game, but, you know, the judge. And, you know, should they agree that the character shifted towards one of the paths, they should have the player fill in the next empty box with a pencil. And this is, you know, leading towards the path that you're on. If you don't shift, then you leave everything there. And so depending on the path that you're on, your modifier will apply in certain situations during social interactions with NPCs. And then, you know, when you reach the end of your path, when you've pretty much gone as far down one road as you possibly can, you circle it, and that's where you are. You get a plus 1d bonus, so go up a die on the dice chain to, you know, in circumstances where this applies. And you have to perform one deed during play that serves as a reminder to the character and those around them of the path they've chosen. So I'm assuming because you're filling in these boxes with pencil, you can go all the way over to the damned. And this is how I would do it too, because, you know, redemption is a beautiful thing. Even if you go all the way over to the damned, if your character kind of takes a turn for the better, behavior-wise, and starts rolling things back, I'd say, you know, move. You get to move all the way back and maybe even possibly get all the way over to the path of the righteous. That's, you know, any morality system, I think, should allow you at certain points, unless you get to a, like, absolute point of no return, to move back and forth as your character, you know, behaves in certain ways. And so the way that this applies, wow, thank you, Ronan. Cat's messing around in the background there. So, this bonus applies, if you're on the path of the righteous, you get your bonus when you are dealing with common townsfolk or lawmen. When you're damned, you get your bonus when dealing with criminals, drunks, prostitutes, people like that. Probably cultists as well. And then characters that can successfully keep centered in their attitudes are rewarded by a +1 modifier at first level when dealing with folks of any path. Their progress with this bonus for each level, they can maintain the line, +2 at the next level, +3 at the level after, and +1 die caps the bonus. If at any point they stray from walking the line, they lose this bonus and instead take the bonus from the path they now follow. So if your character's consistently, like, you know, morally neutral, you know, you do some good things, some bad things, you're really kind of a... Han Solo's a bad example, because he has an attitude, but he actually is kind of a good guy. But if your character's like... shit, I don't know... Deathstroke. If you're really mercenary about your behavior, or if you're, you know, right in the middle. If you're like Mac from the Dresden Files. Mac from the Dresden Files gets a 1d bonus to dealing with creatures of both sides, because he is the middle point. He is true neutral. And for anyone who doesn't know, Mac is the bartender. He runs a magical pub and his territory, his bar is a corded neutral ground, so there are a lot of supernatural meetings that happen at McAnally's pub, which sounds like the greatest microbrewery in all of Chicago, the way that Jim Butcher writes it. I would love to visit McAnally's if only it were real. Anyway, that is your alignment system, and now we get into classes. And the classes here, I gotta say, are pretty interesting. There are some interesting classes here. So you make it through the funnel, and something you'll find with every class is a hit die, which gives you hit points. Your beefier classes, you're usually dealing with like a D12. It can be as low as a D4, I think. Maybe a D5 is the lowest, but I think it's a D4. Crit die, every player in every class will have a specific die that they roll on a specific crit table. And, this will result in whatever shenanigans happen because they crit. And then you get to add your luck modifier. Fumble die. If you fail, if you roll a 1, you roll your fumble die on the fumble table. And then signature weapons. So first level, you choose 2 weapons as your signature weapons. So in, again, Clayton's case, his signature weapons were the Colt Frontier, that he used a lot, and the shotgun, the Winchester lever-action shotgun. That's what Clayton used throughout the entirety of Hellgate. Those would be his signature weapons. Every, I think it's every odd level, you get a new signature weapon. I'm pretty sure. Let's see. Yep, every odd level you add a new signature weapon. So at first level you get 2, you get to add a third at third level. For Clayton it would be the Bowie knife, which never came out, but the Bowie knife. The reason you pick a signature weapon is it's used without a penalty. Anything you use other than your signature weapon will have a -2 penalty to both attacks and initiative checks. And the only people who get exotic weapons, which we'll get into, are monks and sin eaters. And sin eaters get it because sin eaters are interesting. But we'll talk about that. If you want to switch your weapons, say you're tired of using 6 guns and you want to switch to rifles, you announce it before the next game session, and then throughout that entire session you still use the imposed penalties as you're getting used to the weapon, but by the end, it is your new signature weapon. So, I like this because what this does is it prevents players from going, oh, we're dealing with enemies who are out, far away from us. I'm switching out my shotgun for a rifle this time. My character really knows how to use a rifle. And then once that encounter is over and done with, they go, I'm back to shotguns now. It's a good way to fight that. And then you've got your action die. It's typically a D20. As you go, up in level, you'll add more action die at a certain point. You've got your paths. Every class kind of has a tendency when it comes to their path. And then your titles. Names and titles are super interesting in DCC and MCC. It's a cool old mechanic from very early D&D, where 5th level was name level, so you weren't a fighter until 5th level. You were a fighting man, and then you had like different degrees of that. I think thief. Thief had really interesting names because you were like a footpad, a rake, a cut purse. I don't remember what they all were, but basically it's synonyms for thief. But it's interesting. You're not fully the thing you have selected until 5th level. It's an interesting way to show mastery. Then every class has its special abilities, and then luck modifiers. This is what your luck score can help you with in this particular class. So, starting out, here's a nice little steampunk image for you steampunk fans out there. Bedlamite. Your Bedlamite is your Artemis Gordon, your artificer, your creator of crazy eldritch devices, which is what you prefer as your kind of favored weapon, which it mentions here. You get a D8 hit points, crit dies stays a D6, your fumble dies a D12, and you can use your action die on all rolls involving the use of contraptions, attacks, and all class abilities and skills unless otherwise noted. Every time you level up, you roll the percentile, which is 2d10, to determine how deranged you are. So basically, you become a quirky mad scientist. You apply your luck modifier to repair checks, and your path, it kind of depends on where you want to go. It recommends walking the line. And then your class abilities, you have the Achilles Stratagem. You spend 1 full round observing anything constructed by human hands, and you can innately detect weak points. So once you figure that out, you increase your damage rolls made against the object by 1 die type, and your critical range is expanded from 20 to 19 to 20, and a +1 die modifier is added to any critical hit chart roll. You are able to make contraptions. There are 2 kinds of contraptions. Mundane, and what's the other one called? Wondrous. So mundane contraptions, this is like just regular stuff. Already existing devices. And also stuff that's not necessarily magical. Or, improvements to regular devices. It lists spring-heeled boots, lockpick gloves, and waterproof lanterns here as examples. So you look over the blueprint, which is, you just have a conversation with the judge, determine how complex it is, factor in time required, and then determine the DC, use the tinkering and repair table, and then you roll a 1d20 plus your intelligence modifier plus level versus the DC plus any additional modifiers as far as complications or things that make it easier. And then you build a device. Now for wondrous contraptions, these are fanciful, fantastical items that only you can use. And so these will... you only get a certain number of these. You start with 3 at first level, and then you get a new one at each level. You have slots for these things. And Wondrous Contraption examples are on page 178 in the Magic section. Or you can, kind of come up with your own between yourself and the judge, but it recommends starting with the ones listed in the book, just to know the parameters here. And every time you use one of these things, you have to make a gear check. You roll 1d20 plus your intelligence modifier plus your level, and then you compare it to the corresponding number on the contraption's result. Or result chart to determine the result of the check. Anytime a gear check results in a natural 1, mechanical calamity. So down here you've got the progression chart. So like I said, at first level, you get 3 first level wondrous contraptions and 2 mundane contraptions, and it goes up by 1 each level. Then you've got your repair construction table, which lists how long roughly it should take. So let's say you are constructing it says weapons here, so you're constructing a Gatling gun. That would be a major basic item, because Gatling guns were pretty common at the end of the Civil War. So you want to build a Gatling gun. Not repair one. You want to build one. So it's going to take you 2d12 hours. Let's roll the d12. 2 and 5. So it's going to take you 7 hours. And it will cost you $21 total. Seems a little cheap for a Gatling gun, but, it's just a rolling on there. I might actually bump that up to like an advanced based on those results. So that would be for you're building a Winchester rifle, I'd say, for that one. But anyway, moving on from there. Got some lovely art here, a little bit of Day of the Dead type stuff for the Calavera. And a Calavera is basically a conduit between this world and the spirit world. You can see spirits, you can enter the spirit world, you can talk to spirits, and spirits will help you in certain ways. So, D8 hit dice, crit dice a D8, fumble dice a D12, action dice the same. Your luck modifier applies to the dead speak interactions with denizens of the spirit world. You typically start off neutral, but it depends on what kind of spirits you're talking to, I guess. And then signature weapons, you're looking at, like weapons that are given to you by a spirit. So let's say you encounter an undead ghost who kind of looks and talks a little bit like Sam Elliott. And I don't do a good Sam Elliott. My voice can't go that deep, unfortunately. And we're talking about the dude here. Doesn't really work. But he was a cavalry officer, and he gifts you his Sharps carbine. So that's your signature weapon. He pulls it up out of the ground, and he's like, here's my Sharps. Use it as you see fit. So you pick it up, and that's your weapon. Now, as far as abilities, you've got Bone Dance. You spend 1 personality point, so you burn 1 point temporarily from your personality score. And you basically send out a spiritual distress call to any spirits nearby. They'll animate nearby corpses, and they will come to your aid. And so you spend 1 personality point. And then you make a spirit craft roll of 1d20 plus your personality modifier plus your level on the Bone Dance description, which is at the bottom here. It works basically like a spell, and your roll will determine the results. And you can, spend more points to boost that result like you can with all spells. Mostly luck is what you're spending to kind of boost things. And you have Dead Speak. So you can communicate normally with any intelligent being in the spirit world. The language of death is universal. So when you enter the spirit world, or if you see spirits walking around, the Cavalera can talk to them, or Calavera can talk to them. Then you have Gloom. Gloom allows you to take negative spirit energy and turn it into a weapon. Those of you who are familiar with Yu Yu Hakusho might compare this to Yusuke's spirit gun. In a way, yes, but you do actually have to have a gun to shoot spirit energy at people. And so what you do, and you can do this with melee attacks too. So Kuwabara's Spirit Sword is here as well. So bullets leave a trail of crackling azure energy, while melee weapons are awash with the same soul-numbing energy. The power increases damage from a melee or missile attack by 1 die type, and critical hit results gain a +1 per level to the chart roll. Let's see, what does this cost? It does not cost anything, at least as far as I can tell. We'll take a look at the bottom to see what it actually costs. But I don't think it costs anything. Grim Conversation, you pay 1 point of temporary personality, and you are able to speak with any spirit that's gone into the afterlife. So the spirits that you can talk to normally, they are of the near. But these are spirits, like you can pull someone out of heaven or hell to talk with them. And you roll your spirit craft roll, adding the same modifiers, and depending on your results, you might be able to pull someone from the afterlife to have a conversation with them. Sidestep, you can spend personality points, like I said, to cross over into the spirit world, and you can bring people with you for additional points. And there's a roll that you have to make with that too. It's the same spirit craft roll compared to the DC. And then Spook Show. So when an enemy tries to bring harm to you, you can make the same spirit craft roll that we mentioned. And it uses the Spook Show. And so the spirit will temporarily manifest through the Calavera in an attempt to frighten away the target. So if someone's kind of like bowing up on you, you can use Spook Show to basically bring in the librarian ghost from Ghostbusters and freak him out. It's really interesting. And then Void Kissed. Calaveras are just as comfortable within the spirit world as that of the living. Their dual nature gives them innate resistance to attacks made by creatures native to the spirit realm. So you double your normal save bonus against special attacks made by undead or creatures native to the spirit world. That's good because undead are freaky in games like this. Name level's 5th level. That's where you get your second action dice as well. Pardon me. And then Bone Dance. You have the tables here for what happens as far as backlash, failure, and success. Grim Conversation, same deal here. You've got kind of the spell table. And same with Spook Show. Then you get to, and I don't want to go too far past this art, because you have a Calavera geisha, it looks like, which is super interesting. And then Gambler. When I first looked at some of this, I was like, this is definitely Deadlands inspired. It is a little bit, but not as much as I thought it was. So the Gambler, D8 hit points, D8 crit. You add luck to all your saving throws, and you get a mojo die. So the mojo die, it goes up based on your level, and one mojo die is rolled for each point of luck the gambler chooses to spend, thus giving a variable amount of luck for each point burned. So this kind of makes you like a Plantian in a lot of ways. Yeah, in fact, you basically are a Plantian. If you're a gambler, you're a Plantian that has some like card abilities, because you do generate luck. You can give luck to friends, and roll your mojo die. Gamblers regain spent luck points at a rate of 2 points per level at the beginning of each new day. So you do regenerate your luck pretty quick. So yeah, you're a card-playing Plantian, essentially. And then signature weapons, it says, carry something that's easily concealable. So a Derringer, bladed weapon, something like that. So class abilities, you start with Bushwhack. So with this one, target of the attack mustn't be aware of the gambler's bad intentions. So this is when you're attacking someone flat-footed, basically. You make the attack roll with a mojo die as the attack modifier, and if successful, the attack is automatically considered a critical hit. So this would be shooting first, like Han Solo. Although Greedo kind of saw that coming. This is more... I guess this is more the Doc Holliday, you're a daisy if you do, although that was during a shootout. But, this is the, we're just going to be friends. Oops, I shot you. That kind of thing. Or I'm just going to go for my wallet. I have my gun. That sort of circumstance. You attack, you add your mojo die like the deed die for the warrior and dungeon crawl classics, and if you hit, you crit. Then you get Dead Man's Hand, and this is the thing that made me think of the Huckster. So Dead Man's Hand, you charge a normal deck of cards with primal energies, and then you spend 1 point of luck to charge the cards, and a charge card takes to the air and swarm around the gambler until used or the ability expires. There's a chart for this, and it does involve an actual deck of cards, so we'll go with that. Here's the chart. But no, you burn a point of luck each round to keep the cards active, and then on the first round, you flip cards from a newly shuffled deck. So you shuffle the deck, which I will do here. And once your cards are charged, you reshuffle your gun deck, and it's used for the duration of the ability. So, you flip cards from your deck. You have to stop when a face card is flipped, which signals a major effect. So, flip up cards here, and there's a chart that tells you what each card does. First thing I flipped up was a Two of Hearts. Strikes automatically for a mojo die of damage for each card. So that's 2 through 10. So if I keep pulling cards, 9, 7, 5. Let's make sure I show those on camera. 3. Keep going. This is fantastic. 7. I promise I shuffled this. You guys heard me. 10. 2. 3. My goodness. I didn't pull an 8, did I? Let me make sure I didn't pull an 8, because 8s do something different. 4. Heavens to Betsy. I'm glad I'm not playing poker with this deck. 10. 8. Here we go. An 8. Ace or 8 of any suit is a misfire, because aces and 8s are bad. That was the dead man's hand. Which, again, for anyone who doesn't know, when Wild Bill Hickok was killed while playing a game of cards, he had aces and 8s in his hand. So that's the dead man's hand. It's considered bad luck. You suffer 1d8 damage, and you gain a hex token. Hex tokens are bad. When you pull a face card, they each do different things. So Jack of Hearts, card spins in the air over the gambler's head and spits out 1d4 plus class level balls of fire at one or more target within 50 feet. Each fireball automatically hits, inflicting 2d6 damage. But, on down the line, every face card does something different. And then the aces are bad, obviously. But each suit, hearts are fire, clubs are earth, diamonds are wind, and spades are water. And then the jokers. If you pull a joker, whether black or red, drawing a joker allows the gambler to pick any result they would like, be it another face card or a number card, and you get 1d3 boons. So roll your d3. 2. I would get 2 of these white boon chips. And so every round you burn luck and you draw as long as you want until you get a face card or an ace or an 8. You also get to do Fateful Favorite at a cost of 2 points. So you spend 2 points of luck after a roll has failed, and it allows you to immediately re-roll. And in the case where a gambler fails a task that does not involve someone opposing the roll, the re-roll is automatically allowed. However, should the gambler wish to re-roll an attack, action, opposed skill roll, or similar action affecting a foe's fate, the gambler must first overcome the fate of that individual with a contested test of will. So 1d20 plus your willpower save modifier plus your level, versus 1d20 plus willpower save from your opponent. And then Shady Dealings. You're proficient with a set of specialized skills that help them deal with games of chance and other less honorable ventures. So cheating. You're able to cheat. And it's D20 plus your agility modifier plus mojo die versus the marks D20 plus intelligence modifier. High tolerance. So your stamina modifiers increase by +2 when determining how many shots or beers it takes to transition from one level of intoxication to the next, which is on page 148 if you want to get drunk. And then you get +1 dice in rolls related to non-violent criminal pursuits. So stealth, stealing, safe cracking, I think extortion would be considered violent. Anything like that. Pickpocketing. That kind of stuff. You get +1 die type to try that. The piece of art here, very hucksterish. And the gunslinger. The gunslinger is super interesting. This is what Clayton would be technically. You've got D10 hit points, D10 crit die. And the big thing here is your ghost irons. So, going through some of that, we'll get to that in just a little bit. But Deadeye die. You basically get a die that allows you to modify your shots. So when firing multiple shots during a single round, use the Deadeye die result rolled on the first shot for all additional shots fired. So you add the result to a ranged attack roll, which amplifies your shooting. So that's, again, kind of your heroic deeds dice, in a way. Eagle Eye, you have good eyesight, preternaturally good eyesight. Gives you an extra 90 feet of long range for pistols and shotguns and 600 feet for rifles. Fan the Hammer, you are better at fanning the hammer. Everyone can do it with a single action weapon. Each additional shot after the first shot suffers a cumulative -1 penalty. If using their ghost irons, the original Deadeye die result applies to each shot fired. So fanning the hammer, when you do it as a regular player, and for those of you who don't know, that's in the Western movie when a cowboy pulls back the hammer of the gun and rapid fires with a single action revolver. Anyone can do it in this game, just like anyone can carry 2 pistols. The gunslinger's better at it. So when fanning the hammer as a regular player, you have stacking penalties to your roll. Gunslingers, it's just a cumulative -1 for every shot after the first one, and you add your Deadeye die. And your ghost irons. You've got 2 guns, usually pistols, that are possessed by spirits of vengeance. So you've got ghost guns. And they allow you to transform normal ammunition into rounds that consist of supernatural energy. And then your gun deck, every time you fire a gun, you have to pull a card. So I pulled a 10 that time, which is just a regular turn. So as the weapon is physical body of the spirit, there's some consideration to take into account when draws are made from the gun deck. So you still misfire if your result is a misfire. The round's inert, and you have to expel the cartridge to clear the jam. But you can still spend a luck point to ignore the misfire results. You don't have to draw on the critical fumble table if a gun deck draws result in a critical fumble. Treat it as a misfire. And if you have to spend a point of personality to shoot pure ghost rounds, no chance of a misfire is possible. So it gives you a little bit more grace with the gun deck. Lead poisoning, you instinctively aim at the most vulnerable areas on the target. Lightning draw. Let's see. Gunslingers use the reflex save bonus in place of agility when rolling for initiative. So you're the fastest gun in the West. Did I miss something here? No. Not yet. Spectral Leash. You can call your guns back to your hand at any point. It's a free action. So if for some reason you have to like drop your guns or give them to the barkeep, and something pops off, you can whistle Dixie or whatever it is that calls your guns back, and then they're in your hands. It's free action. It's fantastic. And then you have a trail companion, so you get a familiar, a horse, a dog, animal companion, and you share a special empathic bond with their companion. Teach them a basic trick at first level. One at each new level gained, one new trick. And then you get additional hit dice of hit points and a +1 AC bonus as part of their initial training. And then you have trick shots. So these basically are like called shots whenever gun skills, or whatever gun skills the gunslinger had before being chosen as enhanced, allowing for called shots that defy all logic. So this is putting all 6 rounds in the O of the word hotel. And then you roll your Deadeye die along with the standard ranged attack die, and the results of the Deadeye die count as a ranged attack modifier. So this would be using your Deadeye die like a deed die. So if the result is successful and the Deadeye die is a 3 or higher, so, let's say you're trying to hit AC 15 and your Deadeye die is, let's say you're level 3 and you're rolling a D5. Where's my D5? There you are. So let's say AC 15, called a trick shot. So I rolled a 4, but I rolled a 1. So that would be a failure. Let's say I rolled a 13. So it's a total of 17, and the trick shot would be successful. Coolio. And there's examples of the trick shots down here. And two-fisted, you get a bonus to, dual wielding. You can brandish 2 pistols and fire each of them during a round of combat. And so your primary hand is a D20 and your offhand's a D16. Let's see, if you are using as an additional bonus that the gunslinger is using a firearm with a rate of fire of more than 1, instead of the usual -1 die modifier for each shot past the first, you're only at a -1 modifier for each shot after the first from each gun. So if you got a rate of fire 3, you're looking at a -1 for each shot, instead of going from a D20 to a D16 to a D14 on down. So some improvements. And then you have a list of trick shots here, so you don't have to necessarily come up with all of them yourself. Great art of someone using a mirror to shoot an apple off someone's head. Then you have the Hellbilly. The Hellbilly. This is your, evil class, and the Hellbilly has an enchanted jug of hooch that gives them powers. D12 hit points. You have a ballad die that improves as you level up, because you can sing your mountain songs as well. You have a luck bonus to mountain lore checks. Typically, you're looking at melee weapons, throwing axes, bows, and rifles. And I love this little bit here. I haven't mentioned starting wealth, but as a Hellbilly, you can either start with a D8 dollar amount. So, starting with $6, or you can opt to start with a D30 worth of hooch. So you're riding around in a wagon containing $26 worth of moonshine. Fantastic. And so your jug magic, normal people have to make a DC 13 fortitude check to avoid passing out for a D8 hours. And then if you do pass your save, you automatically go to the smashed level of intoxication. But Hellbillies don't get intoxicated from it. And so basically you drink from your jug and you get an ability from it. You do get a cumulative intoxication level. Every 3 uses of a power is 1 more level of intoxication. Smashed is the last level of intoxication, and drinking past this, it's, you're just smashed at that point. So mountain lore, you're skilled when you make checks related to folklore. Ride the lightning. So with this one, you spend a full round of action drinking your hooch, and immediately, as you are getting drunk, you've got a -6 to social interaction checks, -2 to AC, -2 to reflex saves, +4 to grit checks, and +2 to hit. So you are crazy drunk. And you get bonuses to combat and stuff like that. Your melee attacks do 1d, or you roll a 1d24 in your first attack. Second attack's a d20, third attack's a d16 on down the line. And you have to pass a DC 12 willpower save at the start of your round if you wish to stop your rage. So you're basically a drunk barbarian, is what this turns you into. Soulful Balladeer. You have to spend a full round singing and playing the instrument of your choice. And then you roll the ballad die, and the song chosen, you've got different results based on that. Soul Soother, which is a healing, doom and gloom. Up to 1 enemy per level can be chosen as a target of doom and gloom. Chosen targets suffer the result of the ballad die as a negative modifier to all action die. And then Hoedown, where you have to improvise the lyrics. And allies within earshot of the Hellbilly gain result of the ballad die as positive modifiers to all attack action. So here are the intoxication rules. And then up here you've got your chart as far as the magic jug. Different things that you can do. I love that you're essentially a combination of a drunken fist monk, a bard, and a barbarian. The Hellbilly is thoroughly interesting. Not to be outdone, though, the next class, as you can see here, is the Luchador. The Luchador is your pugilist, your unarmed fighter, D12 hit dice, and you don't use any weapons. Weapons are for cowards. You use your fists, your feet, and holds. You add your luck modifier to reflex saves. One thing I will point out here, and this is me, the wrestling fan, kind of wagging my finger at David a little bit here. Walking the line, being a free agent, that makes sense. But if you walk the path of the damned, if you're a luchador, you are not a heel. You are a rudo. And if you walk the path of righteousness, you're a técnico. Gotta use... If we're doing the lucha thing, I know it's heel and babyface and regular wrestling, but if we're doing the lucha thing, it's técnico for the babyface and rudo for the heel. So, just a point of clarification there. Long as we're going the luchador route here. And your signature weapon is covered under Battle Hardened. You can use your lucha die with acrobatics, athletics, and feats of strength. And so 1d8 damage is your damage dice for any hand-to-hand attacks after first level, and it increases with experience on the progression chart. Your fame also increases. And that's how many people know who you are. Flair, luchadors feed off the emotions of the crowd. So you deliver a signature move that will stir up the crowd, and then you roll the attack along with the lucha die. Success on the attack and on the lucha die, 3 or higher, replenishes 1d3 temporary personality points. So you have to have an audience to do this. But you can play to the crowd. Muscle oil. Oh my god. I love this so much. Muscle oil. You have a +2 AC bonus against melee attacks with natural weapons. Signature move. Once per round before rolling to attack, you can declare a signature move. Add the result of the lucha die as a modifier to both attack and damage as normal. But should the resulting lucha die roll be a 3 or higher, the attempted signature move is a success. And you add the effect. There's effects with the examples. And then Spirit Mask. Every luchador is given a Spirit Mask. So your mask gives you powers. Your mask is an artifact. And all of them are listed here. There's various personality points you have to spend to get this effect. But you can get additional AC. You can leap higher. You get a battle cry. Strength of the Bull. One-man army. All these do, various things. And if there's another luchador in the party, you can use tag team. And you can act in tandem. So you can give someone a doomsday device or a heart attack, or pick your tag team signature move: a shatter machine, a magic killer, just whatever you want to do here. Both players roll their action, and the lucha die take the higher of the 2 action rolls, and lucha die rolls to determine their joint success. Base damage is +2 die types on a successful tag team action, with both luchador strength modifiers being applied to the attack damage. Pretty cool. And your signature moves are down here. Lucha die. So you can do good lucha things. Eating up the marks. I love it. Shining Wizard. Tope Suicida. I am upset that there's no Inzaguri, but you could basically say a Shining Wizard is an Inzaguri and do the same thing. Then you get to the Mountebank. The Mountebank is essentially an alchemist. And, we're kind of running short on time here. This always seems to be the case. So I'm going to, kind of breeze past this here. But the Mountebank is your alchemist type. So you get to make elixirs that do various things. You add your luck to showmanship rolls. So you're basically a snake oil salesman at this point, but, with magic. And then the monk, mystic monk. This one, you can use exotic weapons, so you're looking at like swords and stuff like that. Or nunchucks, bow staff, that kind of stuff. You can choose 2 signature weapon slots from the exotic weapons category that inflict 1d6 damage. Increases with level when unarmed. When you're unarmed, you do 1d6 damage, which goes up by level when unarmed. But if you do want to use a firearm, you have to devote 2 slots to it. So keep that in mind. And you get to do cool stuff with your chi. As well as have your martial arts maneuvers, which are similar to the signature moves of the luchador. Then we get to the occultist, and the eagle-eyed among you will recognize that is a likeness of H.P. Lovecraft himself. So that's a cool little detail there. That's very clearly H.P. Lovecraft, and I love it. Although with the glasses, he kind of looks like Woodrow Wilson, and that makes me angry for several reasons. But that's Lovecraft. And the occultist is basically your wizard-type class. So this is the one that really gets to cast spells in any true sense. Like you've got, you can do the spell burn, all that kind of stuff. You get a familiar. A certain number of spells per level. And you've got a, familiar chart with personality types. So you could, let's roll this for fun. It's 2d20, so you could end up with start with personality. Greedy weasel. So I rolled a 5 and a 13, so a greedy weasel. And then each familiar gives certain bonuses to the caster. Oh, look, it's a cat. Then you get into None with a Gun, Revelator. This is kind of your cleric type class, your religious caster, if you will. There's healing involved here. Turn Back the Night, so kind of like Turn Back Undead, or Turn Undead. Holy Smite. And instead of spells, they're called miracles, is the only, difference here. So you've got miracles that you can cast. Then we get to the Sin Eater. Sin Eaters are immortals from various points in time. So Sin Eaters also get exotic weapons based on the time period they were pulled from. And you have to move towards the path of the righteousness. Basically, you are there to facilitate souls to their final resting place. You're the ferryman. And as part of this, you can give the last rite. You have the Soul Aegis, which is your weapon from the time you were taken from. It's got various bonuses to it as well. And if you are in the spirit world, like yourself, your crit range expands. And if you're like in the far, like real into the spirit world, let's say you go to hell for some adventuring, crit range increases to 18 to 20. You also have the Ferryman's Coin. You can put it in the mouth of the deceased. And it also lets you perform the last rites and do, other things with the, with... Let's see. Like with a small boon, and you can give it to people. Or they can use it to heal. You can also sidestep, and you have Soul Sense, which allows you to see objects or sense objects and denizens of the near. And you can do a few other things, but that's basically the Sin Eater. You're like a weird paladin, a time-traveling immortal paladin. And you've got specific powers down here that have the same, spell tables and things like that. And then the last one we get to is the Tommyknocker. This is, the version of the Harrowed in this game. You are an undead being. And you have a lot of powers that are associated with being undead. So you came back from the dead, and then you have Dark Inheritances, which are, powers that you can use based on your kinfolk. Some cool art here. Kind of looks like Jonah Hex a little bit. And then rules. We've gone over this with, DCC. Here's Miskatonic Kid again, Cowboy Thulu, whatever you want to call him. This is all the same as DCC or MCC. If you're really curious about this, I will tell you to check out the DCC video. It's a beginner's guide to Dungeon Crawl Classics. It's, if you're familiar with D&D, you're familiar with this. It's a D20 roll trying to hit the AC or the DC. And then the only real thing here is skills. Train skills, you use a D20 plus your ability modifier. Untrained skills, you use a D10 plus your ability modifier. So skills aren't really in DCC. This is an addition kind of like just for this game. And other than that, let's see. Anything else down here? Actions, you get to take as many actions as you have action die. So, as you level up, you get more and more action die. Usually around 5th level, you get a D14 in addition to a D20. And certain classes, like the Gunslinger, you've got 2 guns. You can roll a D20 and a D16 for both your attacks. So yeah, magic, just to take a quick look here. There's the lore around where magic is coming from, Nyarlathotep, all that stuff, the 7 Days of Night. For the most part, it's, Same thing as DCC. You're rolling the arcane check, modified by your associated ability. You can spend a luck point to increase the results of the arcane check, and you can also do spell burn if you are an arcanist, which is where you temporarily burn a physical stat to boost a spell. And the results will determine, what spells you're casting. There's also corruption, which if you, if you botch a spell, each time a miscast occurs, you might have to roll on the corruption table. There's a minor, a major, and a greater. Let's see if those are here. And I will show them to you. Let's see. Miracles. Formulae. Spell charts. Maybe it's in the appendix. Sorry. Charts. Nope, not seeing anything here. It's in here somewhere. If we had more time, I would go looking for it. And then we've got the bestiary. The bestiary, you can use your DCC and MCC creatures. But then, of course, there are mythos creatures. Which is if you want to use something Chthonian. And then, rumors, and then you've got your monsters. Wonder what all is in here. Like if I go to S, Sasquatch, am I going to find like a Shoggoth? Shoggoth, here we go. C. I wonder, did he do it? Did he stack Cthulhu? These are all, cactus monsters. Sorry, I just gotta know. It's one of those, it's a weird thing, statting Cthulhu. Chupacabra, that is essential for Weird West games. Cold Devil. Cold Ones. You can crack these with the boys. The Color Out of Space. There's one. Crawling Claws. I can probably just expand this here and see. Okay, no, there's no Cthulhu. There's also no Azathoth. So some of the actual elder gods are not statted. Just so you know. So, the bestiary, that's what we've got. Adventures. If we look here, you have an adventure here called Death Crawls West. And let's see what else we have. You also have Lost Souls Canyon. So Death Crawls West, I believe, is a funnel. Yeah, this is the funnel adventure. And then you have Lost Souls Canyon, which is for 6 to 8 first level PCs. So you can go straight into a first level game if you want. Then you've got, your appendices, your charts. Like if we go down to weapons, ranged weapons, you have all kinds of different options here. Weapons explanations, advanced firearms. Explanations of different kinds of rifles. Sharp's rifle, Winchester, 1866 and 1873. Let's see. Revolvers. Did I miss revolvers? Ranged weapons. Come on. Yeah, Derringers, rifles and carbines. This is just, me being a dork at this point, looking at weapons. Because that's something I always find interesting. So you got your shotguns. Here we go, pistols. Muzzle loading, cap and ball, 1860 Army, 1851 Navy, the Walker, on down the line. Then you have your cartridge pistols, your Frontier, your House Revolver, Peacemaker, yada yada, and what have you. Then you have your character sheets. These are all pretty nice looking. I like it. And then some convention photos of people having fun playing this game, which you gotta love. I better recognize some of these people. There might even be some people on here who have been on my show. If I had more time, I would scrutinize these photos and tell you for sure. Anyway, guys, that is going to do it for tonight's episode. We've gone a little bit long, but I really just kind of wanted to get into all this and show you guys what the Weird West had to offer. So, guys, thank you so much for sticking with me tonight. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope this has inspired you to check out this game, because it's going to be a lot of fun, and I'm really looking forward to having David on the show to discuss this game. So next week we'll be back with Cheyenne Wright. He'll be on the show talking a little bit about Hellgate and a little bit about some other things. That'll be a lot of fun to see. So until then, guys, whether you rolled a 1 or a 20, I am so glad that you rolled your bones with me, Ryan Howard, and I will see you guys next week. Happy Thanksgiving.